Hello and welcome back to the Movie Marketing and Distribution podcast powered by Usheru. My name is Alex Stoltz, and as well as hosting this show, I'm head of film here at Usheru and run a company called Future of Film. Usheru is the smarter way to promote your films and catalogue with our automation, analytics and audience building tools, all designed to make your marketing and distribution easier, more cost-effective and impactful. To find out more about what we do and access all of the other podcasts, sessions and free resources, just head over to usheru.com, and I will spell that. That is USHERU, usheru.com. I think the name comes from Ushers in Cinemas, which is an appropriate theme for today's conversation. More of that in a minute. So in this show, it's my job to speak with leading executives about all aspects of the business of getting films, getting content to audiences, and share these with you. We all know it's a rapidly changing time in the world, but definitely in entertainment. And so, how are the leading protagonists adapting? How are they changing? What are the new audience development, distribution and marketing strategies that they are adopting? And what's working and what isn't? So that's what we'll be talking about. And so it's my great pleasure to welcome to the show today, John Donnelly. John is Group General Manager for Lighthouse Group, the independent chain of cinemas based in Ireland. And he has John has over 32 years of experience. You wouldn't know that by looking at him. He looks incredibly young. 32 years of experience in the cinema industry. He launched the first UCI cinema multiplexes in Ireland in the 1990s. The multiplex revolution, that would have been, before moving to Poland to establish multiplexes there. He's also held senior roles in Germany and Spain. The latter as operations director for the group responsible for the expansion of UCI into Spain, Italy, Portugal, Austria, and Germany, opening and acquiring over 54 cinemas. In 2014, he was promoted to Strategic Programs Director for Odeon and was part of the executive team that completed the sale of the Odeon Group to AMC. Outside cinema, he is also involved in music, having just released an album with his band Dark Isle. And just for transparency's sake, John has previously played an integral role here at Usheru as a member of the board. John, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you very much, Alex. I think the check is in the post for that introduction, especially about the looks. So thank you very much. Lovely to talk with you.
You too. Yeah, it's great. I'm really looking forward to this. It's I feel this is overdue, and I'm just really keen to hear about. Well, talk about exhibition. I think would be a big theme of this, of course. But maybe we should start just, tell me about Lighthouse and your role there, and what drew you back to that?
Yeah, well, I've been with the Lighthouse Group now for just over a year, and it's been fabulous. It's been a huge learning curve for me because I've been in the big bad world of multiplexes for my 32 years or so, which has been absolutely fabulous because I was there for the start of the multiplexes in the 90s. But it's great to see another side of the business that I wasn't heavily involved with before, more, let's call it the art house independent. And it's been a huge learning curve for me over the last year. I was basically brought in as general manager of the Lighthouse Group to grow the business, i.e. get more people to the cinema, to bring in a loyalty CRM data program, to install a point of sale in Vista, and to build a team. So basically the team in the last year has completely changed in the cinemas and the head office. So we have a brand new, fresh team in there. I'm really looking forward to 2023, where the lineup and product, particularly for us, looks really, really good. So we have two cinemas in Ireland, one in Dublin, Lighthouse, which is 4 screens, 600 seats, and one in Galway and Palace City Centre, 3 screens and 324 seats. And as I say, they're quite different from what the rest of the market has to offer. Again, more independent, more art house, and they do very, very well, given the competition that's around in terms of multiplexes.
The loyalty program, tell me a bit about that. How's that ramping up?
Yeah. Well, one of the things that we weren't as good on as we can be was capturing that customer data and using it, segmented, et cetera, et cetera. So we've installed the Vista system, which we did last April. And we've been preparing in that time to launch the Movio side of it on the back of a new loyalty membership program that we launched last week. So that'll take about 6 months until we get, enough data points and signups for it. But from that stage on, and again, because of our size, we're hoping that we'd be, very nimble and able to move fast on the data that we get in. You're not talking about 100 sites or whatever. Also, we know our audience quite well because we have a very consistent and heavy going in frequency terms customers. We know a lot of them. They come into the cinemas. We have focus groups, et cetera, et cetera. So I think we'll just be able to take this to another level once we have the Movio and segmentation and a lot more data points in place. But, and I think this is really important, we all talk about these data points and collecting data, Movios and loyalty. We have a lot of other data points that we use, and one of the most important ones is our employees. So our employees are talking to the customers every day, and we have regular weekly meetings to get feedback. In fact, on a daily basis as well, to get feedback from employees and what the customers are saying. Again, we're lucky with a lot of our employees because a lot of them, because of the Element Group, are involved in cinema in some format. So they're studying screenwriting, directing, sound engineering, et cetera, et cetera. So they're very passionate. So we're lucky in that sense that we have a very high caliber of employee that understands the films that we're seeing. So that's another important, I just wanted to mention, data point that tends to get missed.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. That's they're the people closest to the audience, really, aren't they? So
yeah, absolutely. And because we have a lot of customers coming on a very regular basis, given the content that we show, we do listen to them, and that's why when you see our programming, what is it? If you would ask me, what type of program? Well, it's diverse and quirky. It's unique programming. So we're going from cult classics to some Hollywood. We showed Top Gun, it did very, very well. But on top of that, we also, let's call it event cinema, we show. So we do a lot of marathons. So, for example, last summer we had Not Another Teen Season, it was called, where we showed, I'll give you one example that I don't know how I ended up in it, but I was there with my wife, was Twilight. So they showed the 5 episodes of Twilight, completely packed out in 2 screens, everybody jumping, cheering, shouting when different characters come on, the cheesy lines that were falling on the ground, laughing at them. So it created this incredible atmosphere. And they stayed for the, 10 hours or whatever it works out with the 5 episodes. So we do a lot of those. Like last weekend, we had Jackass. And we have special cocktails done for that, So it's creating this excitement. And that's where we go back to this experience. And again, because we're small, nimble, we have the flexibility to do that. And also, I don't know if you've been to the Lighthouse, the space is really good. And that's the reason that we host a lot of premieres. So in October, we did the premieres of The Banshees of Inisherin, where we had Colin Farrell and Brendan Gleeson in. And then 2 weeks later, we had The Wonder, which was an Element production, and we had Florence Pugh in. So, we really punch above our weight, given that we're 4 screens, Art House in the centre of Dublin, but we are the main space for events and premieres, which is great.
The did you quick aside? Did you stay for all 5 Twilight movies?
No, I managed the first one. My wife managed two. So, but I tell you what, it was just great fun because the age of that audience that was in there, that was growing up during that period. So they're all in their 25 now. It was just great to see the reaction and the cheesy lines and all that. It just enhanced the film.
Yeah, it's those kind of that sort of programming. Well, firstly, it's great to be able to have that freedom, I suppose, to try those things and not be constrained just by, having to have 10 screens of, whatever, the latest Marvel film in there. But they sound like they're slightly skewed. These are more for a younger, maybe not. Maybe you say the Twilight crowd has grown up a bit, but they're not like. This isn't like the traditional sort of stereotype of the art house audience who are looking a bit more like me.
Yeah, if you ask me to describe our audience, I'd say it's 20 to 40, hipster, loves films, passionate about films. I wouldn't really call it niche in a way. I'd just call it a real passion for films. And on top of that, they're the people that work for us as well. So it's a perfect combination for the people who come in. They love talking to the employees about, what's coming up, what's next, what do you recommend, all that sort of stuff. And we take this so seriously that we have 3 programmers, one programmer for the Lighthouse, one for the one in Galway, and one programmer that oversees all the programs. So they watch an awful lot of content. And our customers trust us to pick the right films to see. So they mightn't have heard of something or whatever, but, I've been to that cinema before. They have great stuff there. I'll try this new film. And I think that leads on to a problem that we have nowadays in terms, well, we certainly have it in music. If you look at Spotify, you have 100,000 songs released a week. How the hell can you find content? How are we going to find content in cinema going forward? We have Netflix, we have Amazon, we have all the studios, we have the independents. There's an awful lot of product coming out over the next 3 years. And one of my fears is that it gets lost with the noise. In a way, you have to help customers. And this is what Spotify does brilliantly. You might like this, through their bots and that. We use humans to do it, called programmers, who watch an awful lot of films and know what will work for our audience. But that is something that's going to be key going forward. The amount of noise out there, how do we get customers to the cinemas to see? Plus, is it coming out in the cinema or is it coming out streaming? They're confused.
Yeah, it's very confusing, I think, for consumers, for audiences. I suppose having that trust in a brand like yours is very important. So audiences know the kind of thing they can trust, your selection.
Yeah. And I suppose on top of it, just what I said is the marketing budgets from the studios have obviously decreased in terms of theatrical, as they put more money into for want of a better word, the streaming war that's happening at the moment, and have subscribers reached a plateau. And now we're bringing in advertising in there to try and get our numbers up, et cetera, et cetera. So all that world will play out, over the next year or so.
Well, I want to dig into that a little bit more. So things have changed so much, haven't they, in the last few years? It's hard to keep track, but this feels like a period of time where we're still trying to find what the new rules are, I suppose, of exhibition and distribution. Yeah. Do you think we've found that yet, or is it still a case of figuring it out?
Best way to answer is, we're always talking about Gower Street and ComScore and stuff. So we're saying 2019. We'll be back to 2019 by the end of 22. Well, that didn't happen. It's by the end of 23. Well, it'll be by the end of 20, et cetera, et cetera. You wonder, will we ever come back to it? Let's look at some of the facts. You have a lot of multiplexes in the mature markets. These multiplexes are over 30 years old. They need a lot of investment. One thing to notice about multiplex, and I know this from Germany, Italy, and Spain, having worked in them, half of the estate, or say 20 to 30% of the estate, can generate up to 80% of the EBITDA. You can afford to close X amount of cinemas and still retain quite a good EBITDA margin. Now, they're beginning to look at doing this as the leases run out and negotiations happen as to which ones they can walk away from. And we know that Odeon, Cineworld, and View particularly are doing this across all markets. So my prediction, to wrap it up in a sentence, is 25% of cinemas are going to close in mature markets. And that can be a good thing, because the ones that are remaining will get the investment. And investment's needed right across the board. And the great news about that is the investment, the product tools that we have out there, from laser to Atmos to seating, is absolutely fabulous now. Because my attitude to this, Alex, is I want all cinemas to be good. I'm not fighting against the other cinemas. So when somebody goes into a multiplex or whatever, it's got to be a good offer, because the customer perception is all cinemas are like this. If they're not up to scratch, they're all too expensive. It's not worth it. The quality isn't there. They're dirty. They're not well run. So it's really, really important that we have consistency across the board so we can all grow the market together. One person isn't going to grow the market. So that's my first thing, is to say, there's going to be closures. There has to be, in order to get investment in cinemas which are 30 years old. The next thing is, obviously, the windows is state and play. As I was saying to you beforehand, look at Glass Onion. If you had said this 3 or 4 years ago, that a streamer is going to release a film for a week in the cinema, then going to take it out, and then going to release it on streaming 3 weeks later, no exhibitor in the world would show that. Absolutely no way. And look at us now. We're all showing everything from, Amazon announced last week $1 billion in product for theatrical. How long did they play it for? Did they do it same date? Is it a couple of weeks after? What's the window? Nobody knows any of these things. So that has to play out next year, as does the streaming war, and what plateau they're going to settle on in terms of subscription numbers, and how profitable it's going to be. As Mr. Iger comes back to Disney, I'm sure he'll sort it all out. The other big elephant in the room is probably the debt levels that we have in multiplexes. We've already seen, View shareholders lose their shirt in that, particularly Canadian pension funds. We've seen that the Chapter 11 for Cineworld. We know that AMC owes $3.5 billion back to the banks in 2025 at the interest rates at the moment. There's going to be more casualties. And probably the best thing they can do is fold into Chapter 11 and restart again. And I think that is a possibility. There's no doubt about that. And then aside from that, those big things, you have the independents. Everyman is doing great. Curzon's doing great. We're doing well. We have a great mix of films, from the mainstream right to the art. We have a better offer, I think, in terms of, we provide food, cafe, nice dwell areas, alcohol, more mature audience, less disruptive behavior from teenagers, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that all helps. And I think the independents will continue to grow, which is great. And maybe the multiplexes can learn something from that, and we can, grow the whole market together. So that's, I don't know if that answers the global affairs of cinema.
Oh my, wow! I think you covered a lot of bases there. I don't know where to pick up on. Yeah, some big, predictions and analysis there. In terms of, how do you read the Cineworld bankruptcy, for example, in the US? Where do you see that heading?
I think that Cineworld would probably try to offload the Regal in order to keep the estate in Europe, which is always their prime baby and Mookie's love. having worked with him in Poland, where we were growing cinemas together, so I know him quite well, and obviously expanded around Eastern Europe before coming into the UK. So I think he'll look at sort of trying to keep that, and maybe they'll let go, whatever that means, to a buyer, whatever that means. Netflix, Amazon, Cineplex, will they come back in and buy it at a discounted rate? But I can't see them hanging on to it, for wanting to keep Europe. I mean, that's just mine, but God knows, what will happen. I think another important thing that is, again, never mentioned when we talk about these things is people. What people in the future are going to be running these companies? And we're talking about 5 years' time, most of them will be retiring, from the Views to the Odeons, AMCs. It's going to be interesting. I'm just hoping that new blood comes in there that have really, really good vision. And I give out to the executives of a lot of these companies for not bringing up younger talent faster, because I think it's a big opportunity going forward. These are the people that understand the future and the lie of the land, and are, willing to take more risks. And particularly as we come into this very, very noisy digital space in all aspects, with the amount of product coming down the line, with unique marketing ways needed. I just think, where's the talent for the future? I'm just asking that question. Is it out there? Do we need to grow it? Is it too late? But I'm sure it's there. From what I've seen and the people I've worked with throughout the industry, there's a lot of really, really good talent coming up. Let's give them a chance.
Yeah. Do you think the industry then needs a rethink in terms of the offer, or is it just a case of, like you said, just making sure that investment goes into the right sites, and so it's a premium, experience?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of all these things. One is, money, strictly money. We need money for investment in the old estate, as simple as that. Well, how can we get that when you have such heavy debt levels? So that has to be figured out. The amount of product that's coming out, how do we market that to the customer? And then thirdly, do we have the right people coming into this industry to drive it forward with, original thinking, not carrying the baggage of the past, who are not afraid to try things and do things. And I mean, one of my philosophies throughout my whole career is you should always try and do yourself out of a job. So at the moment, I'm trying to do myself out of a job, because you try to give back all the knowledge you learn to the people you're working with, and give them the authority and the autonomy to put in their own ideas. Because if you don't do that, what is the point? So that's always been one of my basic philosophies as I worked around Europe. You got to give back and give the autonomy to the people so they can grow.
You're listening to the Movie Marketing and Distribution podcast, powered by Usheru. How is your marketing strategy right now? Are there areas you want to improve? Or perhaps you are looking for some fresh inspiration and ideas on how to remain ahead of the curve? Well, the Usheru Marketing Scorecard is a completely free resource to identify your marketing strengths and opportunities in less than 5 minutes. Head over to scorecard.usheru.com and you'll receive a personalized report on your marketing, what's working well, areas of improvement, and quick wins to boost your 2022 planning. So that's scorecard.usheru.com. Score your marketing today with Usheru at scorecard.usheru.com. And now back to the show. Talking about mentoring people and bringing them through the industry. Tell us, John, to look back, how did you get your first break in the industry, and what was your routine?
I always remember as a kid, we went to France and I saw this supermarket, and in the supermarket beside it, there was a 10-plex cinema or something like that it was called. And I was about 12, 13. I was just foggleize that, because we always used to go to one screen, two screen if you're lucky cinemas. That always stayed in the back of my mind. There was an ad then in the paper, one of the Irish papers, opening up a multiplex in Tala. People want it. So I went along to the interview with my good old buddy, who I think everybody will know, and this Mr. Steve Nibbs, who's currently deputy CEO of View. He was the area manager at the time for part of England, and he was by Millard Oaks put him the task of opening up this new territory, Ireland. So I did the interview with him, got along really well. We started in Tala, built up all the cinemas in Ireland. Just one thing, these were the days where you opened a multiplex cinema. So Tala was 12 screens. It did 1.5 million people every single year for 5 years. Unbelievable days. There were people driving from all around the country to do that. And then, went well in Ireland. Steve said, listen, would you be interested? This is about 6 years later. Would you be interested in going to Poland to open the cinemas there? We had a joint venture with the Polish company. So Steve sent me off there. And again, he gave me a lot of freedom just to get on and do things. And Steve and me had a very, very good relationship, kept in contact all through the years, even when he left, because he left halfway through my stint in Poland. My other mentor then, I suppose you could say, or helped me get a break in the industry, was Jose Baye from Spain, who was the president of Southern Europe under the Odeon UCI days. And he asked me to come along and operations director in Germany, Italy, and Spain, and turned that around again. Isn't it great when you're in an industry and work with people and they end up becoming friends at the end of it, and you're still keeping in contact? To me, that's a really good sign. And that's why this industry is so good. But having said that, my absolute mentor does not come from cinema at all. He came from my first part-time job when I was 18 or something like that, 16 maybe. No, it was 18. I was in college doing marketing, and I got a job as part-time in the fruit and veg section, the most important, in a supermarket called Super Quinn. Super Quinn was run by an incredible person called Fergal Quinn. And if you want to learn about customer service, go out and buy his book, Crowning the Customer, one of the best books ever written. Crowning the Customer.
Crowning the Customer. Okay.
You will read it. You will read it in an hour and a half, and it'll floor you, because all the stuff that's mentioned in it, I don't think we're doing now, and we should. But this guy was incredible. He was on the floor at all times. He was doing the stock takes with you. He was the big executive, but he'd be down the floor going through figures, asking about customer service. Simple things. He'd be there on Christmas Eve wishing everybody a happy Christmas as he left the supermarket. Really special things that I'm not sure if we see anymore as we sit behind our desks and stuff. This guy was always on the floor talking to customers, packing bags, asking questions, learning from employees. And he was just an incredible motivational person, really full of life. He's a very famous person. I think people listening in from Ireland and this will all know Fergal Quinn, or Mr. Quinn, as he was known in those days. But an amazing person. I think the other thing to mention, the other people you learn from, and that I've probably learned most from, is the employees and the managers you work with. And when you sit down, you talk to them, and they give you feedback. I just think that's amazing. It's a breath of fresh air, and it's the sort of industry can do it. And then thirdly, I'd say suppliers and, people like Coca-Cola and the various integrators and stuff. I've learned loads through those. And again, we're so lucky in this industry, because I remember when some executives came in to run Odeon from the tech world and stuff, they were absolutely mystified that we'd be talking to our competitors. We'd be out there in Cine Europe having a drink with the competitor. Isn't that brilliant? And sharing some stories and ideas, because at the end of the day, we all need to work together to get more people to go to the cinema.
Well, so I just spurs a question there, John. Who do you see as your competitors?
Competitors are everybody that's going to stop them going from a cinema on a Saturday night, from a pub to a restaurant. That's why we have to give. It's good value going to the cinema. It's great fun. It's an experience. I love that Twilight Marathon. I normally go to the pub with the friends, but this was much more fun. It's creating those sort of something special experiences in that. So I don't regard it as other cinemas, and I go around to all the other cinemas. I check them out. We all get along very well, particularly in the Dublin market. And I think it's so important we're all given great service to grow the pie. Because one of the things, Alex, and this is another thing I want to mention on this, what gives me a real bee in my bonnet is I cannot stand this box office reporting, the GBO of this film and that film. If we reported only attendance, we would have done something in this industry about 10 years ago to stop the decline in attendance. We keep talking money, and it's bullshit. It's bums and seats as people come to the cinema. It's selling more popcorn to them, but we don't focus enough on the attendance. And we're always talking, of course, the ticket price is going up by 10%, 5%, whatever each year, which masks the fact that less people are coming to the cinema.
Yeah.
Sorry, I just needed to get that off.
Yeah. No, it's and now, on a, it's still a conversation we have a lot with national film bodies. When they're looking at measuring their success, it's like, you can't rely on box office. You can rely on it less now than you used to be able to. So I think, it makes complete sense.
Well, particularly with subscription and all of these things happening. I mean, most people have the subscription service now, and it really masks how many people are coming.
Yeah.
So I think it's an important aspect to look at.
In terms of those sort of, wider changes, I suppose that's like, working with studios and distributors. How do you sort of see that relationship with exhibition at the moment? Do you feel there is where would be the opportunity for more collaboration or more that progress on that front?
Well, it's interesting to see the dynamics that have happened over the past 3 years. I mean, content is king, was really proven now. Distribution is king. Exhibitors have had to accept the reduction in windows. They've had to accept to show films that appear in streaming at the same time because they're under so much debt. Now, this doesn't particularly affect us as independents as much as it would, obviously, the multiplexes that are much more reliant on the Hollywood blockbuster. But it's going to be interesting. I mean, I just feel sometimes like the exhibitors' backs are to the wall, and we're going to have to accept this going forward. Now, the good news is there's a lot of content coming out, whether it be, the comeback from the COVID situation where production has ramped up and all those films are beginning to flow through in 23, 24. On top of that, we have the Amazon and the Netflix product coming out. So there's a lot out there. But I go back to that initial point is, how do we make sure customers know that that's coming out, given that the marketing budgets have been reduced? So there's something that us as exhibitors can do to make sure, through our subscription programs, through our social media, etc., to make sure that customers know what's coming out. And just on that point, data, we've brought on a person for our Galway market and for our Dublin market who solely focus on CRM, social media. It's that important that their full-time job, even though we're quite small cinemas, and it works really, really well. And we have great engagement and a great tone on, and it's very important, that tone, particularly the type of cinemas we are. We don't come across as too corporate, but cool and hip and interested in film. And that works really well. So I'd encourage that to ensure you have a 100% focus on getting the social media aspect right in comms.
Yeah, that's good advice. John, tell us what your biggest challenges are. I think you outlined a lot of the challenges today, but what are the biggest maybe opportunities in your work at the moment and the space? And then also, what excites you about the future?
The big opportunities that I've seen, I'm talking more personal here, is we've brought on an amazing team of managers and employees in the cinemas. Most of them are new. We brought on a great support office team to help them. We've focused more on programming by putting more people into that, and more on CRM that I've just said, putting more people onto that. I'd love to have this chat this time next year and see how that has worked out for us. But I'm really, really positive that we're doing the right thing in those two spheres, getting the people right and the resourcing right, and focusing on this loyalty, comms, all those aspects with our customers to grow the pie. Secondly, there's great films for next year. And in fact, I want to mention this. I got last week to see an amazing film. It's called Tar, and it stars Cate Blanchett, and it's coming out on the 13th of January. Extraordinary film. You've heard it first here. She'll get the Oscar without a doubt. Without a doubt. I'll take any bets on that. Anybody wants to write in on. But it's incredible. So if you all get a chance to see that, that's what I'm talking about. The quality of film out there at the moment is stunning. It's just, can we sell it and make sure everybody hears about it? I think, thirdly, that the multiplex situation will become clearer in terms of how debt will be serviced. I'm hoping, people will come back in droves to the cinema, that we don't need to go into any more bankruptcy, and they can get enough revenue funds to reinvest again. I really hope that happens. So I just think it's really exciting. And then you have the technology, the in-cinema experience, the quality of the picture, the sound, the seating is incredible. It's never been better, and it's just going to get better all the time. And hopefully the prices will come down of that equipment. But I think all this will help to differentiate ourselves from sitting at home. Yes, you have your 50, 60, 70, 80 inch TV and whatever, but it's up to us to make that whole experience, from technology to people to service, et cetera, a lot better, and give them excuse. And also the programming, as I've said, we have fun events, make it fun, engage the employees. And I think we're on the road to recovery, which will be 24, because we're still going to see things figuring themselves out in 23. I suppose the other thing, Alex, we haven't mentioned is obviously the cost, the OPEX costs that we're all facing, and the challenges going forward. Particularly, we've external consultants talking with them regarding, what's my utility cost for next year? What's my electricity, gas, water going to be? And they just said multiply things by 3 or 4 on the basis. You just can't afford to keep running if that happens for another 2 years or whatever. People are just not going to be able to survive. On top of that, we have a lot of pressures on the employee costs, with the cost of living crisis. So they're going up in Ireland by 8% from January the 1st. And the cost of living crisis, will people cut back on going to the cinema? Unlikely, given it's not as expensive as going for a couple of pints or a meal or whatever. So you'd hope that it's a cheaper alternative for some form of escapism. But I think, sorry, I forgot to mention that, but those OPEX costs are going to be a challenge, and I know everybody's trying out anything and everything to try and cut back as much as they can on it.
Yeah, that's huge, isn't it? And sort of being attacked from all angles, it feels, from on that front. But yeah, look, I mean, there's some really optimistic and positive things to focus on. I think the way you're laying out your vision there for this community, if you like, around the cinema, around the staff, around the curation, that just seems like the right approach.
Yeah.
Great pleasure, John. Thanks for joining the show.
Cheers. Thanks a lot, Alex. Bye-bye.
So thanks again for joining this episode of the Movie Marketing and Distribution podcast, presented by Usheru. At Usheru, we are passionate about data, innovation and movie marketing. And we have now combined all of these passions and knowledge into a product that is built to, essentially transform film marketing. The Usheru Total Movie Hub is created to empower distributors and film bodies to build their own audience data and run outstanding campaigns that are both more cost-effective and impactful. To find out more about how Usheru can transform your campaigns and your marketing, just head over to usheru.com. You'll also find there more episodes of this show and an extensive selection of sessions and resources on distribution, audience strategy, and film marketing. And if you'd like to book a demo or have any questions, please just drop me a line at alex@usheru.com. I would be delighted to help and love to hear from you. So that's usheru.com, and I will spell that. That's USHERU, usheru.com. Do check it out, and I look forward to welcoming you back to the Movie Marketing and Distribution Podcast very soon.